Hey, it's time for another episode of Waterproof Records Podcast, and today in studio, we welcome Greg Attonito, the frontman, lead singer of the New Jersey punk band, The Bouncing Souls. Yes, The Bouncing Souls have been at it for 40 years, so I was excited to welcome Greg onto the show today, and I can't wait to talk about the new album that they have coming out, go all the way back to Greg's childhood, figure out some of those inspirations and what his waterproof record will be. So let's get to it. It's time to talk to Greg Attonito from The Bouncing Souls. Let's go.
Things are gonna change, I can feel it.
If this gonna be that kind of party, I'm gonna...
Waterproof Records. Waterproof Records. Waterproof Records with Jacob Gibbons.
Okay, theme song check. So you know it's time to tell you about DistroKid. DistroKid.com/VIP/waterproof. That's a special link that'll get you 30% off your first year of uploads. It's my link that I give to you as a gift. So go use it. If you plug in DistroKid.com/VIP/waterproof, you'll save 30% off all that amazing music that you're going to upload. And then one day, you're going to be a guest on Waterproof Records because I'll have heard your amazing album and I'll be like, wow. And you'll be like, I used your special link and I saved 30%. Can you believe it? I don't know. That's what I like to imagine that might happen for you. All right. We wrapped that up. Now let's get to the interview. Welcome.
Thank you.
To Waterproof Records, Greg Attonito.
Thanks, Jacob. It's great to be here and it's cozy. It is cozy in here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
You've been on the move.
Yes. I'm here in Los Angeles. Just doing some stuff because we got a new record out and I'm really happy and excited about it and just, ready to talk about it.
Yes.
I do love it and proud of it and all that.
Yeah, absolutely. New record comes out at the end of June. I want to say June 26th.
You got it.
I nailed it.
Thank you. June 26th.
And the name of the new record?
Born to Be.
Born to Be. Mm-hmm. That's great. And the song that's was just dropped in April was Light? The Light?
The Light. That's right. Yeah. First track on the record and just excited, for the same thing we've been doing, just doing what we do and just like more grateful than ever to be like making music with my friends and bringing that energy out there and connecting with folks and, doing what we do.
Yeah. Yeah. The Light is really so much energy and the speed and it's bright and the words are very uplifting. I was really, really loving the way that song sounds.
I appreciate you tapping into that aspect of it because, it's like we went through some discussions about, here we are, we're a freaking punk band in the world right now.
Right.
Yeah. What do we want to say? We have these discussions, like we've done for a long time, are we political? We're being political, not political. We've had these discussions for many years on and off. And it's important, seems more than ever now,
right,
to have these discussions, or there seems like it was pressing in more than ever. And, luckily we landed on what makes sense for us because you have to figure out how do we all want to express ourselves in this situation of the world being so divided without dividing it up even more.
100%. We are on the same page. You are literally in the house of unity. And why I was so excited when I heard this song is that, punk music, rock in general has this almost this like prerequisite, like you've got to go out there and be pushing against. And I think we have a lot of that. We have a lot of push against. And in a lot of ways, we don't have anybody saying, is there any way that we can start to come back together again?
Yeah. I think that's what music's for. To me, yes, there's all kinds of, it's for everything.
It's for everything.
There's a million messages in it that's the beauty of it. Everyone can put their message into it. So it's sort of a matter of like what works for us. And, we obviously went back and forth, and I think that care is in that energy is in the music, and getting that into the record that's the real hard part.
Yes.
And I have to give lots of credit to everybody, like all the band guys, Will Yip, who produced it.
Yes, I saw Will Yip, who's done a ton of records, and you've worked with him before.
We have.
Yeah.
And, I have to add this detail because it's super fun. We were scheduled to start like on a Monday in Will's new studio in Philly, and he calls us a couple of days before, like whatever it was, Thursday. And he's like, guys, I got to fly to LA to get a Grammy. I'm going to miss the first day. And we're like, dude, are you kidding?
That's awesome.
Which was fantastic. So
Yes.
he won a couple of Grammys with Turnstile while we hung out at Brian's, the bass player's place in Bradley Beach, and just worked on some tunes, and we're like waiting for Will.
Amazing.
So all of that is wonderful, and I just have to add that because it's to celebrate Will and how fun it was that he came back from the Grammys and started doing our record.
That's so cool.
It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But to get back to the vibe of the record, I think after making records for so long,
Right.
and doing it every wrong way that you possibly can, having to walk down that road and learn and to get to the place to have this opportunity still and care enough that we can sort of, as a group, have Will. He's really been, the past few recordings we've done has helped us like really get past a lot of our old habits of like, just obsessing about some verse or part for like 2 hours.
Overthinking.
Yeah. And getting help. He's the person that's just like, okay, guys, that's good. Let's move on. And everyone else is like, all right, Will's right. You need that person in the room to be like, let's trust him. We don't need to obsess about this for 2 hours.
Yeah.
And then you capture a lot more spontaneous energy that way without lingering.
For sure.
And again, same thing. Like the energy is what impacts people, not the words so much. The words are part of it, but that you feel that in the energy, that's the message. And that there's something that connects us all if we can really focus on that, despite our differences, despite all of the things that you can name down the road that are just like, wrong with the world right now.
Yeah. There's words in, I don't know, pardon me for not knowing the exact lyric, but the, on the light, where you talk about like galaxies in your mind. And I loved that visual about not being able to take that from you.
Yes. Yeah. Well, appreciate you noticed that, because you really have that much is going on in each of us.
Yes.
And if we realize it, or at least attempt to,
Right.
you just have to like sit back and imagine that.
Yeah.
All of us are that,
Yes.
And, it's been subversively, that power that we all have has been taken away from us.
Yeah, it's true.
And I'm going way back, and so things like rock and roll, I believe have helped bring it back, help empower us all.
Definitely. And songs like this and ideas like that remind us that we are all connected and all the same, and every little thought that's going on in our brain, it's going on in everybody around us all the time. And so just extending a little bit of grace to our fellow humans is definitely in need.
And makes more of a difference than you think.
Than you think. I think so. I think it's very true.
And it feels like you can get caught in this trap of being like, well, I have no control about it. You're looking at your phone and there's a zillion bad things going on. But you've given up your control.
Right.
You're not having an impact in the moment that you could have, even if it's just being present in the moment. That has an impact. Yeah. Instead of like not living your own moment, Yeah. I really believe that, and I think the more we can all remember that, like, we're going to be winning, as opposed to like, these the powers that be, whatever they are, the whatever we want to call them or identify them as, it's those that want to control people as opposed to like, empowering people.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, I was curious, the previous record from 2023, 10 Stories High, some of this, I would imagine, which if this is true, that a lot of that came from it's during the pandemic and you're connecting with your audience and the fans of the band, and you've got a loyal, devout fan base. So you're connecting with these people, you're hearing their stories, you're spending one-on-one time with them. And the music on that album is really inspired from these people's stories. So then that in itself leads you to where we are now, right? You're really taking a closer look at the individual live stories. So of course the way you evolve from that is taking it from the individual, and it's like sharing that with the rest of the world. Like, look at what we've looked at. Is there some truth to that?
Yeah. And that was a great experiment.
Yeah.
You know, it was, really fun to not make it about us.
Right.
You know, because that really gets annoying, honestly.
Yeah.
You know, like, how many songs can you write about? What are you writing about? Like, why are we still?
Totally.
Why do I wake up in the morning and want to sit down and write something, and then I'm like, all right, I have to pick up my guitar. That was kind of cool. Like,
right.
I can't stop it. You know.
Right.
But I'm like, give me a fucking break here.
I don't want to always talk about myself.
Why do I, who the fuck am I think I am? Like, everyone come listen to me, you know, drop your lives and come listen, like that's a lot. It's a lot to ask, So I always keep asking that question, make it worthwhile for these people to show up, So that was a great, departure from that.
Sure.
Let's tell someone else's story. And, obviously there's a type of writers who do that really well. You pick up stories from this and that and the past and all these beautiful, amazing things that have happened to other people.
Right.
And if you can bring them into a song, it's awesome. So that was fun to do that. I loved it. And I think it set us up for what happened on this record.
Yeah. Yeah. Because it seems like when you look at the individual, it would inspire you to be like, let's look at the bigger picture of the whole planet, if you will. But let's go back to your childhood. Did you grow up? I know you grew up in New Jersey.
I did.
You're a Jersey boy.
Yes.
Did you grow up in a musical household where was your family like cranking tunes around when you were growing up?
Not really like playing music. My mother played piano.
Okay.
And I was talking with my wife today about some other interview I had done about talking about my childhood, and she said, "Oh, did you tell the piano story?" And I was like, "Oh, I forgot." So I can tell you.
We get the piano story here, exclusive on Waterproof Records. Let's go.
So here, but this moment, I was talking to my dad. I must have been like 10, 15 years ago. We were just chatting. I don't know how it came up, but like, I was like, Dad, you remember when we got the piano, and it was in this house that he lives in. This other house. It was the first house we moved from when I was a baby. We lived in it. And he's like, he pauses and he's like, how do you remember when we got that piano, And I was like, I don't know. I remember seeing it come in the door, I was like, must have been in the living room on the floor on the couch, and I saw it move in the door, and it was like ended up landing right. It was just moved in about 5 feet, and it was against the wall right by the door.
Yeah.
And he's like, "You were probably like not even 2 years old."
Wow.
So we recognized it as my first memory.
Yeah.
So of all the things,
to remember, a piano, right?
Like, it must have been laying on the floor, and this big thing came in the house, but it's a visual I don't. So he was a little bit like, wow, okay.
Yeah.
And so that piano was played by my mom, who, just played, she learned to read music, and she wasn't like, she didn't really write songs or do anything really creative. She would read music and play songs, like old timey stuff, some contemporary stuff like Beatles, and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And my dad listened to the radio, and my dad's like Pontiac or whatever in the 70s.
Yeah.
Whatever was on the radio in the 80s, and like Jim Croce. He had a Jim Croce cassette.
Nice.
Definitely had an impact. Those like storyteller style songs. So those are the earliest, I guess I will say, very early.
Very early. Yeah. Seeing a piano, locking in on that, and just the the music that your parents enjoying, the piano. But, that leads me to the question, which is your waterproof record. And this was when I heard what it was, I thought this was a pretty fascinating choice given your music trajectory. Your waterproof record was.
Yeah. So, my waterproof record, I wanted to cheat. I want to tell you, I really still want to cheat.
Okay.
But I'll cheat after.
Okay, cheat after.
I'm
cheat
not
after.
Gonna cheat.
Yeah, okay.
My waterproof record is Robert Johnson, the complete recordings of Robert Johnson.
Wow.
But before I got there, can I explain you my process there? And
that's what this show is for. A podcast is people talking endlessly. So you get to just go down whatever rabbit hole you choose.
Great, because I got a lot to say.
Good.
I think that's probably what's funny about that question. You're torturing any guest. You're like, what do I do?
Oh, totally.
It's torture. So my cheat was, at first I was like, this is real.
Okay.
Like, I realized as I was thinking about it, I was like, so many records that I discovered weren't the actual records. I had like mixtapes given to me.
Yes.
I never saw the damn record cover.
Right. That's how we got music. That's how we got music.
So I'm like, if I had that mixtape to show Jacob, I'm like, here's the record.
Right.
You know what I mean?
This is what
it has like 3 replacements records on it.
Right.
Like, those songs of the replacements that I didn't get all the songs from Let It Be. I got some of them.
Right.
And then I got some from Hootenanny.
Right.
And I got some from Tim.
Yeah.
And that's the record.
That's the record.
I almost chose that record.
A mishmash, all cobbled together of amazing songs on a mix. That's the waterproof record.
That would be that
makes
was
sense.
My first choice of like some version of that, like Bruce Springsteen. I got to do that because he had a huge impact on me.
Yeah.
Have to mention that Jersey Kid, like he was from down the road. It was just like this. That is real, a real person doing that. It was very deep for me. So I could have chosen a Bruce Springsteen record. But it was just
that had to be huge.
Obvious.
That had to be huge for every Jersey kid.
It was. So that's why I almost chose that. And then, there was like even like going down like the reggae road, like in ska and stuff like that, and the specials and Bob Marley and those things that had a huge impact on me. But I had to lean into Robert Johnson.
I love it
because it is that one that's like, oh, really? That one?
I mean, I was blown away because at least from my childhood, my first introduction to Robert Johnson isn't through music. It's through the movie Crossroads with Ralph Macchio, and it's got Steve Vai in the little solo scene. Do you remember that film?
I do.
I was a kid, and I didn't even know the significance of Robert Johnson and the Crossroads and the deal with the devil and all that stuff. But when you said that, I was like, it's not only blues, but it's a very haunting choice.
Well, it's sort of like, the reason I chose it is because all those other things stemmed from Robert Johnson. So I found Robert Johnson not in the very early years, but like when I was like 17 or 18. Yeah. Which is still...
It's pretty impressionable age.
Yes.
To be listening to Robert Johnson.
Exactly. Right. I got that record. And then also I realized that was the record. It was like the box. I got that. And I also chose it because of my real like search, which I think many of us as music geeks and like obsessive music people, you have to get to the core of something. You're searching for some core. You don't know what it is.
Where did this come from?
Where does it come from? How far back can I go?
Who lit the first match, you know, and caused it to go?
Exactly. And so you get on this trail, you learn about some basic stuff. You hear the Pointer Sisters on the radio in your dad's Pontiac, or whatever's happening, and rock and roll, Led Zeppelin, the Beatles, the Who, all that was happening. Yeah. And then like, what was Pete Townsend was listening to the blues, and so was Keith Richards, and so what were they listening to? And then, we didn't have the internet then, so we would somehow figure out those clues. Yeah. I'm like, I want to hear what those guys were into. And so then that's how I got there. And then there was something about, Robert Johnson being sort of the one on the top of the mountain for me. when I started being like writing and wanting to like write music and play music,
Yeah.
you know, where's the meaning coming from? What is the most meaningful? Who emotionally and like deeply?
Yeah.
And then Robert Johnson, he kind of created the mythos of rock and roll.
I think so.
You said it, you know, like this sort of like spiritual,
Yeah.
churchy
Yeah.
things in there. But then, you know, the devil's
Right.
right there.
Exactly. It's good and evil.
Right you're at the crossroads.
You're at the
you know?
crossroads.
It's the, you know, it is the birthplace of rock and roll. The crossroads in a image, you know what I mean?
It is.
Bigger
It is.
than Robert Johnson.
Yes.
You know, obviously he wrote that song, or we suspect he did, or he got it from somewhere.
Somewhere from the community or
Exactly.
whatever, but we credit him for it.
Yeah, exactly. So that was kind of why I'm like, I think I have to land on this.
I love it.
Because it's such a spiritual experience for me, and the journey of, you know, that was sort of the beginning. You know, there were different beginnings, but that was a place where like this is sort of like where the beginning happens. There's something in there I want to learn about, and I'm just going to go my version of it, you know?
I love it. What I love about your choice and the whole description you just gave is you've basically summarized why I made this show, because I became obsessed with, there is something about when we're young and you hear an album or you hear music and it changes every fiber in your being. And so when you talked about like you're listening to Jimmy Page, you're listening to these guitar players and you're going, well, what did it to them? And then what did it to them? So you're trying to chase the origin back to where did it all start?
Yeah.
So that's such a cool answer, and why I ask you, because I think knowing about Greg and the Bouncing Souls and like what you've done for 40 years, it all begins at this place, at this very special place where we're like listening on the car stereo, or somebody just put something on, or that tape is on, and something just washes over you and like, I'll never be the same again. I'll never be the same again. So choosing Robert Johnson for me is great, because you're basically taking all of that and going all the way back to the beginning. I think it's pretty rad.
I love that you enjoy it and appreciate it.
Yeah.
Because I was like, I don't know where this is going to
I
land.
love it.
Okay.
I love it. I've gotten some fun, crazy answers. So, you know, of course,
Yeah,
whenever
sure.
I ask anybody this, sometimes I always ask, can I know in advance? Because if I'm sometimes
It
if
makes sense.
Yeah,
you
it's
can
like,
listen, maybe recheck on something, or maybe it's something you haven't heard.
yeah, exactly. Because if they were to say something live while we're going and I've never heard the thing, then I feel like a dope.
It makes sense.
Yeah, but when I ask the question of people, they're either like, oh, it's impossible for me to pick, you know, because there's so many influences, and I get that too. Like you have different eras and moments in time, but I love to see that when you really boil it down, people can kind of point a finger at a sound or a moment or a feeling, and I think that's what I'm trying to get to more than anything, is the feeling. And everything I make is about feelings.
And you're obviously, I'm sharing my process with you, because I couldn't really just say that and then be like, all right, we're done, Jacobs. The process is all part of that whole conversation. Like,
it's all part of it.
What's important to me, you know, like to continue. Like also other parts of my process getting there. I recently almost accidentally found the Pete Townsend biography.
Okay.
At the thrift shop in our little town. My son and I were dropping stuff off at the thrift shop. He's like, "Can we go in?" And I was like, "Yeah." It wasn't even like, cool. I want my son to learn how to thrift. You know, find some cool stuff in here we don't need.
Right,
you know?
right.
And on the shelf is Pete Townsend's biography, and I pull it down. I'm like, "This is $3, and it's a hardcover." I'm like, "I wouldn't buy this."
Right.
I don't really. I'm like, I'm not. I read books, but I wouldn't buy it, and I bought it, and it was like opened up all this stuff, memories and stuff. I had, you know, the Who's Greatest Hits cassette when I was like 12.
Right.
It was like pre-punk, and just hearing all the stories, it was an awesome surprise. Like that book found me, like one of those things.
Yeah.
And then I revisited some of the stuff that I listened to, you know, that I forgot.
Right.
You know, I forgot like this live record he did, a solo record that had Save It for Later on it. That was, you know, like his original version of it. And I listened to that thing on repeat, like with my Walkman in the 80s, like
I love it.
over and over and over. But I just forgot.
Totally. You can, it's like there's the ones that keep coming back in your life. They're mainstays, they're fixtures. But then there's those pieces of music that you spent a summer with and you haven't seen it or listened to it since. And when they come back, oof, that's a strong sensation.
It was awesome. So reading the stories and literally like playing stuff that he was talking about in the book and remembering it all. Yeah. Was awesome. It was a great experience.
Yeah. So it's the 1980s, and when the Bouncing Souls is coming together. Yep. You guys are all in high school together.
Yes.
And so is it I got to know first, because this has been fun for me to find out. The first band names. Give me the worst one that you're at before the Bouncing Souls.
Well,
it doesn't have to be bad. I just find that they all obviously are like not great choices before you land on the one.
This one's a fun one.
Okay.
There's definitely that could have been worse. The moment we got to the name, it was in the attic at my house, my dad's house.
Yeah.
Brian and I were just sitting there. We had a rehearsal spot.
Yeah.
We probably had rehearsed or were just hanging around, and we're like, we need a name. We had like a show at the fire hall coming up in a week, and we wanted to make a banner.
Yeah.
So like we actually need a name. We've been avoiding this for a long time, like probably months, and we couldn't find a name. So we're in there, and Brian's like looking around. He's like, The Doors. Oh, no, it's taken. The Walls. Maybe have like the name would be cool.
Right.
And then he looks at the bag of Doritos.
Yeah.
And he says, The Cool Ranchers. So for a minute, we paused on the Cool Ranchers, to be totally honest.
They could have been the Cool Ranchers. Could have been 40 years of the Cool Ranchers. Sponsored by Doritos instantly. Instantly.
So just to add to that, before we move on, a friend of ours recently heard that story, and maybe just last year, and he started a band called the Cool Ranchers.
Amazing.
So there's a band now.
Okay, well, he's our friend. That's so great. What I love is that you guys were, you're teenagers, you're in high school, you're thinking of the band name, and you're pulling the classic Usual Suspects, Kaiser Soze. You're just glancing around the room, looking at items. And in a way, the name that you landed on, so for my audience that they've been around for 40 years and is common knowledge if you're the Bouncing Souls fan. But if you're listening and you're like 15 and maybe you don't know, it's related to Doc Martens.
Yes.
And so was it actually, you saw the packaging?
Brian was wearing a boot,
Yeah.
And he was looking around, looked at the Doritos bag, moved to his boot tag, Doc Martens with Bouncing Souls.
With Bouncing Souls.
It was, the tag was just sitting right off of his leg.
Yeah.
So then again, we landed on that, like Souls. What if we change the spelling, Souls? And then we're like, okay, hold on, dude, that's kind of cool. But we didn't love it. I didn't love it. I wasn't like, that's it,
Yeah.
It was like, all right, I guess. Soul's cool. We like referencing soul in there. Maybe it's not in a corny way. Maybe it's kind of cool. But it grew into itself for me. We became the Bouncing Souls. The name, we made the name, I feel like, after we grew into it.
I think so too. The sound, the bright, the anthemic, the uplift. Mm-hmm. So it's there. You embraced it and carried it even further.
Yeah.
But when you guys were playing together back then, before you were writing songs, or maybe you were writing right away, but were you bringing in like covers and things that
we did? We started as a cover band.
Yeah.
So Pete and Brian, again, this is a big, huge moment. Going back even further, Pete and Brian were in a cover band called The Switch, and Ramones,
nice.
Billy Idol, U2, The Who, just what was happening at the time, you know. And everyone used to hang around, we used to hang out, and they would practice and play their songs. Like they would play parties, like they would bring their gear to our bud's basement, and someone would buy us beer, and we would be underage drinking in the basement, and those guys would play covers, every song they knew. Yeah. Led Zeppelin, whatever. And we would sometimes just hang out at Brian, just a handful of us, drinking Jolt sodas and
Jolt,
smoking butts or whatever. And At one point, we'd all be hanging around, and somebody would always be like, "You want to sing this song?" You know, somebody would maybe get up and sing something.
Yeah.
And I sang. They asked me, like, "Guys, Greg, you want to sing? What do you know?" And I was like, "You guys." They knew "I Can't Explain" by The Who.
Yeah.
And that was the moment. And that was that moment, like singing on the mic, singing "I Can't Explain" with my friends, had the complete lit. I lit up, and I was like, "What is happening to me right now?"
That's amazing.
And so I couldn't like turn back.
Yeah.
After that, couldn't explain what happened to me, but something happened, and then it was like, "Yeah, I want to do that again. Like, can we play that again?" You know?
Yes.
Now we know one song.
That is so cool. That is so cool. And you guys it's 89 by the time you cut your first demo, I think, right? That's the official first release from the band, right?
Yes. Yeah, we did start writing very early.
Yeah.
You know, when I entered, I think we all had been going to shows, you know, together. So we were starting to be like, you know, small shows, like shows at City Gardens in Trenton, which is this very famous venue, iconic. And you look at the shows that happened in the 80s and 90s there, and it's insane. Like there's all these amazing bands, you know, that weren't as iconic yet, but they all came through there. So we were exposed to these great shows, and we would see, we're like, maybe we could do this, you know what I mean? And we started to become aware of like kids putting on shows, like teenagers putting on shows, like in fire halls and those kind of things. And we were like, whoa. So that whole scene we were growing into and learning about, and it was truly underground, you know, and that's what was beautiful about it. Like kids doing stuff all completely on their own, like unattended by teachers and school or adults. You know, it was like, whoa, this is fucking cool. All of that was appealing.
Punk seems to have that inviting energy to young people.
Yes. Yeah.
To break away, right?
Yeah, and like, you know, write your own way, you know, like set up in the, you know, rent the fire hall and play in there, make a flyer, you know what I mean? It was just like when, you know, on a Saturday night, you know, it was just like us kids doing it for other kids. It was just, it's still like, it's amazing.
Yeah.
It has such an impact on you at a young age to be like, you know, you're really like creating your own reality, you know, beyond what's, you know, all the paths that are being shown to you and what you're supposed to learn and go and this and all that. So you can't, you know, even to this day, you know, whatever that is for anyone, it could be anything, you know, like that's a powerful thing.
Yeah.
So we were all dabbling in that. And then that's where the songwriting started coming in, you know. We wrote a song, the first song we wrote was called Brain Dead.
Awesome.
And, you know, there's a demo somewhere, like a cassette somewhere. Like my mom has it, I think.
You got to go get it. You got to go get it. You got to upload that thing.
Yeah, we definitely wrote a bunch of bad songs. We didn't know what we were for years. Like, you know, 89, we put out 7-inch. We finally put out a CD that came out in 93 and called the Greenball Crew EP. And by the time it came out, you know, we were just trying a million things. There was like ska and punk and funk and hardcore.
There was a wild time in music, early 90s. Everything was all over the place.
One song, and it was like, we were trying to figure it out. And then we wrote a song called Joe Lies, which was like, I think that was, we all of us placed a flag on that like song as being the band that became our modern version. Was like, okay, this song's different. It actually makes all those songs, you know, before it, they're just, we're not interested in them because that's not what we are. This is what we are now.
Yeah.
So that was a strange time.
Yeah.
So we need to write more of these songs.
Yeah.
How can we do that?
Was it very collaborative? Was like everybody kind of had their own say in it?
Yeah, and I think it's important to mention that we all always collaborated equally, and you know, Pete and Brian write lyrics. Everybody writes lyrics.
That's why you're still together.
Yeah, I know.
You know what I mean? Like,
know.
it really is, to survive 40 years, there has to be some kind of dynamic between you guys. Now, obviously, there's ups and downs, but you just have to be able to communicate with the others.
You have to care. We love each other. You know,
Yeah.
that's what kept us together. You have to have emotional, creativity. If you're a creator, invested in this thing. Otherwise, if you're just playing a part, you're not going to care as much. It's plain and simple as that, And for us, we were all aware of that. So we kind of, even at our dumbass teenage selves, somehow we're aware of that. So, I think it's because we were able to do that together. And again, it had its bumps in the road.
Sure.
And we evolved and kept changing. But writing, like, somebody will come up with a lyric idea and maybe bring it to the group, or chords and words, and then it would turn into a Bouncing Soul song.
Yeah. Yeah.
And everybody looks at me and says he's the guy who writes the lyrics because he's the ones who sing. And so Brian and Pete don't get that credit, but it's all very collaborative, very group. And that's why I think we also have made it, because the songs are a little more rich.
Yeah.
Because it's not just
One person's POV.
one person this is about me again.
Right,
everybody.
right.
Here's another song about me. Don't you want to hear it? It's just like really
Yes.
ridiculous when
Yeah.
you break it down that way.
Yeah. When it becomes one person's thing. Oh my God, I love that so much. I did want to say also, while I was reading up on you, one thing that I discovered is, one, you're a dad. I'm a dad as well. And I learned that you have a fun project as well with your wife called Playdate.
Yes.
And this started around 2015. And so cool because there was a term that it was described as that I've never heard before, which is kindie rock.
It's pretty funny, right?
That's so funny.
We laughed when we heard that too.
Kindie rock. That's so great. So it's basically like, a fun rock for kids.
Intro to rock. That's sort of what we do a little bit. Like our show is just sort of a little junior version of like introducing little kids to a rock show.
That's amazing.
And yeah, we didn't have that plan
Right.
at all. There was no business plan. Like, it started out sideways. It was like Shanti had written a story, and it is a children's book first. So we did a children's book called I Went for a Walk.
Okay.
And she had written the story, and we're like, this is a super cool story. It'd be cool to make a book out of it.
Yeah.
And one day I was whining about like being on tour and be like, it's just like always hurry up and waiting. You can't really do anything else.
Right.
This was sort of like even like having a lot of internet and it was all that wasn't really social media, which now you can do more. You can definitely get stuff done and like pay your bills and shit when you're just driving in a van or something.
Right.
But you couldn't do that then.
Yeah.
So she's like, well, why don't you just start spending some time doing art for the story if you really just want a project? And I'm like, all right, I guess challenge accepted,
Yeah.
And I just started doing it on the road for a few years. And
Really?
we ended up doing 36 art pieces.
That's awesome.
We self-published a book and then just full DIY style wrote messages on MySpace, because that's when this was.
Yeah.
Hey, it's me, right from the Bouncing Souls. Anybody, we have a children's book. We'd love to do a reading. We just like book a tour, DIY punk style. But it was for a children's book.
That's awesome.
And sure enough, teachers, people in libraries were like, yeah, come to our school. Bouncing Souls fans.
Yeah.
We're teachers. They're
Yeah.
wow, they're really out there.
Yeah, for sure. They grew up with you.
Yes. And so we booked a little tour, and then just because we were actually sort of musicians first, like my wife's a great singer and songwriter as well. She wrote a song called Imagination, which was just a cool song. It doesn't necessarily have to be a kid's song, but it worked as a very sweet song about your imagination.
Yeah.
And so we would read the book, and then we would pick up the guitar and play Imagination. And so people, the teachers and the librarians were like, the book's great, but do you guys have, that song was awesome. Do you have CDs? And we're like, no.
Right.
I guess we could record that song.
Sure.
That's where we started. And then the catalyst was Mike Park from Asian Man Records. He was already well into like kids music project.
Really?
And he was looking for more projects to put on his label. He needed
Got it.
to get he needed more titles to get the distribution he wanted.
Yeah.
And so he got wind of us doing it from some friends. And he called us. He's like, I know you guys are doing kids music. You got to do a record. If you do a record, I'll put it out.
That's so great.
So it was like, okay,
Yeah.
we're going to try this then. Mike's going to put a record out. Let's do a record. So a whole cool new experience. Let's write a song about an owl. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's got one verse. The owl goes, who, and then you're done.
then you got
I
a song.
love this song. We're going to play the bongo drums. It was like
That's so great.
so liberating.
Yes. Yes.
You know, I'm realizing, I'm like in this kind of punk ass box. You know what I mean? I'm like, it's got to have, Marshalls, and it's got to be loud, and it's got to be fast.
It's got to be fast. I gotta get to the hook and go to the bridge and whatever. Yeah.
Which, of course, I love. But
Yeah.
now I'm like, this is, again, it made me, I was like, got better at everything I did with the Bouncing Souls because, but still doing the same thing.
Yeah.
It just for little kids. And then, of course, the parents, it's for the parents. If you've had kids when they're 3 and 4,
Yeah.
and you like, haven't been to a show in 3 years or whatever. And Greg from the Bouncing Souls is doing a show for my kid. Their minds are blown.
Yes.
They're almost more excited than the kids. They're like, dude, oh my God.
Gotta go. That's amazing.
After the show, they're like, just loved it, and that's what's funny about it. And
I love it.
Shanti and I have had such a cool experience doing it.
Yeah, and you just released another, like this year, You and I think it was called.
We have a couple singles came out this year, and another one coming out, and so it's going great.
Is it your kid that's like, I saw a video?
Yes, that's my son.
That's your son, and he's like playing the drums. I was like, this is great. It's a family affair. This is awesome.
Yes, that is very special. He's taken
Super
to
cool.
drums, and that is just fantastic.
Yes.
I mean, we're driving in the car, and his buddy is like, my friend, his friends, it's like, he's into heavy metal now. And I'm like, all right. Does he know what heavy metal is?
Yeah. What are we talking about here?
Right?
What's metal?
I'm going to play you the first heavy metal band. They're called Black Sabbath. Right? He's like, all right,
let's go.
So I put on Iron Man, and he's just like, all right, this is cool. And he's like, Dada, like, can we play this? And I was like, we can play this. Yes, thanks God, thank you God.
I'm so jealous. I have 2 sons,
Oh, no.
and I have had this thing where like my 17-year-old, he's very musical. He loves music very much, but our Venn diagrams are very, very little overlapping. I pushed rock so hard when they were kids. And he just, because he's into video games and stuff like that, he got into more like ambient, beat driven. Like he really got pulled into that world. So he makes his own music on his computer, and he's amazing at it. But
cool.
I'm just this guy over here with my guitar, and I do not know how to keep up with what he's doing on his computer. And then my 5th grader,
interesting.
who knows? Because he's young and he likes music. So I keep waiting for him to be like, Dad, can I pick up a guitar or something? So we'll see.
You never know. And
we'll see.
Who knows? Anything goes.
The funny thing is, it's just like when I think as a parent, you look at your kids and you like want them to love the things you love.
Sure.
And sometimes they do. Some things they fall for, like the movies or whatever, and they're like, yes. But you not always win them all, because they are still their own human beings.
Exactly.
And they're going to do their own thing.
Exactly. I know. Well, you never know.
You never know. I'm hoping for my Black Sabbath moment with my son, because that is such a cool moment where they're like, yeah, my friend's getting into heavy metal. Can I listen to some metal? That's amazing. Well, the new record, I'm really excited about it. You guys had The Light, and then another single off of it. It was last year, was it Power?
It was Power, and the other one was United. Those are 3 singles from it.
Yeah, 3 singles so far. So you've kind of gradually been leaking them and leading up to this record coming out. And so is there festivals or tours or things on the horizon with this new record?
Yeah, so June 26th, the record comes out. June 27th, we play our big festival in Asbury Park. It's called Stoke for the Summer. Less Than Jake's playing.
Awesome.
It's going to be an awesome bill. I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah.
And then, we're doing what we do, gentlemen's touring, I call it. So we're doing like 2 weeks.
Gentlemen's touring.
Gentlemen's, we retire at a reasonable hour.
Right. No more ragers.
No 9 months on the road, a year.
Yeah.
That's not for gentlemen. That's for a maniac young men.
Yeah, I get it.
So 2 week blocks. That is still, at our age, that's a good, going for it. We have a couple blocks in the Northwest and some Canada in July, and then in September, and then same like 2 week blocks that we're doing throughout the year. Support the record.
Awesome.
And just, again, like happy to be out there.
Yeah.
And like bringing the vibes, and sharing the vibes,
Yeah. Is there any, now I know this is the thing that breaks my heart, because whenever you've got a band that doesn't live on the West Coast, I always find out that it is way easier to do tours and shows on the East Coast than it is the West Coast, because we're so spread out. Is there any sign of LA?
We're coming not February of 27.
Okay.
And please come. Be my guest.
I will be your guest. I will take you up on that. I'll
Please
be there.
do.
Yeah,
I
I'd
hope
love
so.
that. I'd love that so much. Well, dude, this has been just an absolute blast. And what I loved is we got to dig into not only like these very specific memories of your youth, like being in the band, the singing moment, the collection of tapes, Robert Johnson, all that. But I'm just excited because I really think that the attitude, the vibe, the energy of the Bouncing Souls really aligns so much with what I'm trying to do with the things I put out in the world and Waterproof Records, and just uplift and unite and bring people together. And, when I listened to The Light, I was like, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
That's great.
Yeah, this is good stuff, man. I love it.
Well, I guess there's a reason why we've come together then, Jacob.
That's right.
We're doing something.
We're on this journey.
Because I really believe that, like we really project what, the world we want to live in. Mm-hmm. And that has a true power. And then here we are, like, I always think about like the incredible world that, the Bouncing Souls lives in. Like, it's not one place. It's people all over the world. And we, share music. We share a spirit that is like amazing. Like if you can like capture that in a bottle, man.
Yeah.
That would be amazing.
Yes.
But I'm glad once again, to be still meeting new people.
Yeah.
And connecting in this way.
Yeah.
So thanks.
Man, thanks so much. Really appreciate it. I had such a great time talking with Greg, and I'm so glad he was able to come to the studio because he does not live in California. So I was lucky enough that he was passing through to handle a few other things, and he could come here to my studio, sit down with me. But everything that he was talking about, taking us back to his childhood and that example of the mixtapes and then Robert Johnson, I just loved that that's where he went, because it was a cool way of looking for what I'm always looking for, the thing that built you, the thing that built my guests, the things that built me. Like why are we the way that we are? What are those building blocks? And so much the conversation that we were hearing today with Greg was the building blocks that made him who he is today, in the Bouncing Souls, with Playdate, as a father, as just a human being on this earth. And that's what I think is so special about those kind of conversations, where you can really begin to explore what it is that built us from the ground up. So, all right, before I get out of here, I got to tell you about Pantheon Podcasts. I'm a part of the Pantheon Podcast Network, which is a massive network of music podcasts, and I'm so grateful to be a part of it. And it's one of the reasons that this podcast has grown so much. If you go look on YouTube, not a lot of people are watching the YouTube version, but man, I checked the streaming numbers the other day. I had no idea that this show had grown so much to so many thousands of you. So I'm happy to have you here. I'm glad you found me. I'm glad you're listening to the show, but I still need you to go and spread the word further. So help me grow to Pantheon. Spread the word to everybody you know. Be like, are you listening to Waterproof Records? It's only gotten better. I mean, he started just in his bedroom talking about Siamese Dream, and look at how far he's come. He has a lead singer of the Bouncing Souls come and sit with him at his house, for God's sakes. So you should definitely be sharing that with everybody. That's what I'm trying to get to. All right. Also, don't forget to use distrokid.com/VIP/waterproof and save your 30% off your first year. And again, thanks for joining me. I really can't do this show without you. So I appreciate all your support. Every time you share anything, my videos, you comment, you participate in this community. And I'm just so truly grateful for you. So remember, I've got some cool merch out there on a what's it called? Dashery site that says Waterproof Records on it. I got a couple of those things. So you could walk around and be like, yeah, I listened to this show. Or you could wear one of my other shirts and let people know that you're part of this amazing, loving, unifying music community. So I'll make sure to include those links in the YouTube video, which you streaming listeners will never know where the links are. No, I'm kidding. You can figure it out. All right. I'm going to get out of here. I've been talking for too long and I'm ready to go eat dinner. So have a good night. Thanks for joining me on Waterproof Records. I'll see you next time.
Things are gonna change. I can feel it.
If this gonna be that kind of party, I'm gonna